Hello, this is Benjamin Sidique, a Sierra Leonean based in Sydney, Australia, and the Keepers Network, presenting the Sierra Leone Civil War, a brutal conflict. It tore apart a nation. This war, lasting from 1991 to 2002, was marked by extreme violence. It was fueled by a complex web of factors. These included political instability, economic disparity, and the illicit trade in diamonds. At the heart of the conflict lay a glittering prized diamonds. Sierra Leone was known for its abundant diamond deposits. These precious stones, instead of being a blessing, became a curse. They fueled the war. They financed the atrocities. They prolonged the suffering. The Revolutionary United Front, led by the enigmatic Foday Sanko, emerged from the shadows of Sierra Leone's discontent. Sanko, a former army corporal, tapped into the widespread frustration with the government. He promised a revolution, a cleansing fire that would purge the nation of its corrupt elite. His message, laced with populist rhetoric and promises of a better future, resonated with many, particularly among the disaffected youth. The RUF, initially a small band of guerrillas, quickly gained momentum. They exploited the porous borders with Liberia, where a civil war was already raging, to smuggle arms and recruit fighters. Their ranks swelled with young men and boys, many of them abducted and forced into service, their minds twisted by violence and indoctrination. The government, led by President Joseph Saidu Momo, seemed paralyzed by the RUF's sudden and violent rise. Plagued by corruption and inefficiency, the army was ill-prepared to counter the rebels' guerrilla tactics. The government's response was slow and inadequate, further eroding public trust and emboldening the RUF. As the RUF tightened its grip on the diamond-rich eastern and southern provinces, the government's control over the country began to crumble. The rebels, flush with diamond money, were better equipped than the national army, their ranks growing with each passing month. The government's failure to protect its citizens, coupled with the lucrative diamond trade, created a perfect storm for disaster. The diamond curse. Diamonds, those glittering symbols of love and luxury, became Sierra Leone's curse. The country, known for its alluvial diamond deposits, became a magnet for smugglers and war profiteers. The RUF, recognizing the value of these gems, seized control of the diamond mines, using the profits to fuel their insurgency. The diamonds, easily mined and smuggled across the porous borders, provided a lifeline for the rebels. They bought weapons on the black market, funded their operations, and enriched their commanders. A glimmer of hope. The SLA fights back. By 1993, the Sierra Leone army, initially caught off guard by the RUF's ferocity, began to regroup and fight back. Bolstered by new recruits and a sense of urgency, they launched a series of offensives against the rebels, pushing them back from the outskirts of Freetown and reclaiming some of the lost territory. The fighting was fierce and brutal, marked by atrocities committed by both sides. The SLA, often poorly trained and ill-equipped, relied heavily on artillery bombardments and ground assaults, tactics that resulted in heavy casualties among both combatants and civilians caught in the crossfire. Villages became battlegrounds, homes were reduced to rubble, and the civilian population bore the brunt of the violence. Executive outcomes: mercenaries on the diamond fields. In 1995, the Sierra Leone government, desperate for a decisive victory over the RUF, turned to a controversial solution: private military contractors. Executive Outcomes, a South African-based company staffed by former soldiers from apartheid-era units, was hired to provide training and combat support to the SLA. EO, equipped with advanced weaponry and helicopters, quickly turned the tide of the war. They launched a series of successful offensives, driving the RUF out of key diamond mining areas and securing vital infrastructure. Their tactics, though effective, were often criticised for their ruthlessness and disregard for civilian casualties. A fragile peace. The 1996 elections and the Abidjan Accord. With the RUF on the back foot, Sierra Leone took a tentative step towards peace. In 1996, under intense international pressure, multi-party elections were held. Ahmad Tejan Kaba, a lawyer and former UN official, emerged victorious, promising reconciliation and a new era for the war-torn nation. The new government, eager to assert its authority and end the bloodshed, entered into peace talks with the RUF. The Abidjan Peace Accord, signed in November 1996, aimed to disarm the rebels, integrate them into society, and pave the way for lasting peace. The AFRC coup, a nation betrayed. The hope for peace that had flickered briefly in Sierra Leone was extinguished in May 1997. A group of disgruntled soldiers within the Sierra Leone army, calling themselves the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, or AFRC, staged a coup d'etat. Led by Corporal Johnny Paul Karoma, a charismatic but ruthless figure, they seized control of the capital, Freetown, with surprising ease. The AFRC coup was a betrayal of the fragile peace that had been established. The coup leaders, motivated by a combination of greed, frustration with the government, and a desire for power, plunged the nation back into chaos. The coup shattered any remaining trust in the military and government, leaving the people of Sierra Leone feeling betrayed and abandoned. The fall of Freetown anarchy and despair. The fall of Freetown to the AFRC and their RUF allies was swift and brutal. The city, once a symbol of hope and progress, descended into anarchy. Looting, rape and murder became rampant as armed gangs roamed the streets, terrorizing the population. The AFRC, unable or unwilling to control their own forces, and the RUF fighters who had joined them, seemed lost amidst the chaos they had unleashed. The streets of Freetown, once bustling with life, became eerily silent, save for the sounds of gunfire and screams. Homes were ransacked and burned, businesses were looted, and hospitals were overwhelmed with the wounded. Ikomoji, intervention, a glimmer of hope amidst the ruins. As the situation in Sierra Leone deteriorated, the international community, spurred by the horrific images emerging from Freetown, finally took decisive action. The Economic Community of West African States Monitoring Group, or ECOMOG, a West African multinational force, was deployed to Sierra Leone with a mandate to restore order and reinstate the democratically elected government. ECOMOG forces, led by Nigeria, landed in Freetown in June 1997, facing fierce resistance from the AFRC and RUF fighters. The battle for Freetown was intense and bloody, marked by street-to-street fighting and indiscriminate shelling that caused widespread destruction and civilian casualties. However, ECOMOG, with their superior firepower and determination, gradually gained the upper hand. A diplomatic push for peace, the Lome Peace Accord. As 1998 drew to a close, the world watched with growing concern as Sierra Leone remained locked in a brutal and seemingly intractable conflict. The AFRC coup and the subsequent reign of terror had shocked the international community, prompting a renewed push for a negotiated settlement. The United Nations, led by Kofi Annan, took a leading role in mediating talks between the warring factions. The Lome Peace Accord, signed in July 1999, was the culmination of months of intense diplomatic efforts. The accord, signed in Lome, Togo, aimed to end the 8-year civil war that had ravaged Sierra Leone. The agreement, hailed as a breakthrough, granted amnesty to all combatants, including the RUF, for crimes committed during the conflict. A flawed peace, the RUF's empty promises. The Lome Peace Accord, while hailed as a triumph of diplomacy, was deeply flawed from the outset. The RUF, despite signing the agreement, showed little genuine commitment to peace. Foday Sankoh, notorious for his brutality and unpredictable behavior, seemed more interested in consolidating his power and enriching himself through the control of the diamond mines than in leading his movement towards disarmament and reconciliation. The disarmament process was slow and halting, with the RUF fighters reluctant to surrender their weapons. Reports emerged of RUF commanders continuing to recruit and train new fighters, while others used the ceasefire to engage in looting, extortion and intimidation of civilians in areas under their control. The UN mission unravels the path to renewed conflict. By early 2000, the fragile peace established by the Lone Peace Accord was on the verge of collapse. The RUF, emboldened by their control of the diamond mines and the lack of progress in the disarmament process, grew increasingly assertive and openly challenged the authority of the UN mission. In May 2000, the situation took a dramatic turn for the worse when the RUF took hundreds of UN peacekeepers hostage, sparking a major crisis. The peacekeepers, deployed to monitor the ceasefire and disarm the rebels, were caught off guard and easily overpowered. The hostage-taking sent shockwaves through the international community and exposed the weakness of the UN mission. Operation Palliser, the British Lion roars. As the crisis in Sierra Leone deepened, with the United Nations peacekeeping force outmatched and outmaneuvered by the RUF, the international community seemed poised for another failure in Africa. The Lone Peace Accord lay in tatters, the disarmament process had collapsed, and the world watched in horror as images of captive UN peacekeepers were beamed across television screens. It was at this critical juncture that the United Kingdom, the former colonial power, took the unprecedented step of intervening militarily in Sierra Leone. Operation Palliser, as it was known, was initially presented as a limited intervention, aimed at evacuating British citizens and securing the airport in Freetown to allow for the safe withdrawal of UN personnel. A desperate battle for Freetown, turning the tide. The arrival of British forces in Sierra Leone had an immediate impact on the morale of the beleaguered government and the demoralised UN peacekeepers. The RUF, taken aback by the swiftness and decisiveness of the British intervention, initially hesitated, unsure of how to respond to this new threat. However, the RUF, fueled by a potent mix of ideology, greed and desperation, soon launched a series of attacks on Freetown, hoping to overrun the capital before the British could fully deploy their forces. The battle for Freetown, which raged for several weeks in May and June 2000, was a brutal and chaotic affair, marked by close-quarters fighting and indiscriminate shelling that caused widespread destruction and civilian casualties. The war ends, but at what cost? The combination of British military might, renewed UN resolve, and the deployment of Guinean air support gradually turned the tide of the war in Sierra Leone. The RUF, weakened by losses on the battlefield and facing mounting international pressure, was forced to retreat from Freetown and other urban centres. Their grip on the diamond-rich areas began to slip as government forces, bolstered by British training and support, went on the offensive. In January 2002, after more than a decade of brutal conflict that had claimed tens of thousands of lives and displaced millions more, the Sierra Leone Civil War officially came to an end. Scars of war. The guns fell silent in Sierra Leone in 2002. A wave of relief swept across the nation. It marked the end of a brutal chapter. The war's end, however, revealed the true extent of the devastation. The once vibrant nation was scarred physically and emotionally. The war had left an indelible mark. The physical toll was staggering. Cities and towns lay in ruins. Infrastructure was destroyed. Homes were reduced to rubble. The economy was crippled. A glimmer of hope. Despite the overwhelming challenges, a glimmer of hope emerged from the ashes of war. The people of Sierra Leone, known for their resilience, began the long and arduous task of rebuilding their lives. They returned to their villages, cleared the rubble and planted the seeds of a new future. The international community, recognizing the plight of Sierra Leone, pledged support. Aid agencies arrived, providing food, medicine and shelter. International organizations worked to rebuild infrastructure, restore basic services and support economic recovery. Edited, compiled and produced by Benjamin Sidique and the Keepers Network.